Good morning, good evening, or afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to another Phoenix Rising edition of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm joined by Aaron Ayers and Matt Rovards tonight. And we have an extra special guest joining us, none other than Jake Anderson, who you may know from 98.7. He reports on a little bit of all the teams around the Valley. You've probably seen his articles on everything from the Suns, Diamondbacks, Coyotes, but his main focus is Phoenix Rising, and he's a guy that we see out at every match, every practice, just kind of giving all of the Phoenix Rising information to the masses. Welcome to the show, Jake. It's an honor to have you out here today.
Well, Phil, Aaron, Matt, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm gonna have to say that's probably the nicest intro I've ever gotten before. I do all those
on the radio.
I do those things. I do cover the other teams, but like you said, that is not as much as as I do Phoenix Rising. So I don't know. I think you might be giving me too much credit, but yes, thank you for having me. Very, very honored to be here.
Well, like I said, on the Arizona Sports website, I mean, I was looking through your articles, and I think you've had an article on every team in the Valley here at one point or another. But of course, we're a football show, and me, Aaron, and Matt are certainly looking forward to talking some Rising. And today we had a huge 4-1 victory. So I want to start off by
wasn't it 15-0? I thought it was 15-0,
yeah, the graphics department for today's match on the stream I watched was not the best. The scores were wrong quite often.
And the time was out and the full-time score was wrong. That's what we term in Australia a Barry Crocker.
I think what happened was, man, they, with all these schools meeting, homeschooling, the graphics guy just was letting his middle school student there run the graphics, learning the ropes.
Probably right there, I think. You see the time disappear at one point and someone was going, oh, shit, what are we doing?
Well, I thought we'd kind of just start off by going around and having everybody give their thoughts on what happened on the pitch today. And Jake, since you're the guest, we'll start with you, and then we'll just kind of go around in a circle from there.
All right. I thought it was kind of a deja vu of when they last played, which was the first match of the restart on July 11th. That was 4-0. Main differences is Dadashov didn't start today, did start in that one. We see Flummo playing in the number 9. We saw some different defenses now. It looks like Calistri looks like he's going to be permanent on the right side. But when you're playing a team in LA Galaxy that, I don't want to nail them into the ground, but basically this team isn't going to be one of the better teams in USL. We see how many kids played today. They had 9 kids. I'm calling them kids because they're 16 to 19 years old, and 8 of them played. And the only one that didn't play is the backup keeper. And the reason why he's not playing is because Abraham Romero is a fantastic keeper, and it could have been worse than 4-1. But I think it was just an overall good performance from the side. I think Rick and the boys should be happy, but as coaches always are, they're always going to find what they need to improve on, and look forward to Vegas because now they have to play them 3 times in the next 4 matches.
Which is a bit crazy. Los Dos are obviously in a sort of level below Phoenix Rising today, but they did make a little bit of headway down the Phoenix right flank there, and I saw Calistri run around a couple of times there. I'm wondering, was there an improvement, do you think, from Calistri on the side, or was that a definite tactic from Los Dos, as Phil would say?
Yeah, he kind of did. You saw him get beat a few times. He's not a natural defender. We know when we saw him come over here last year, we saw him play as a winger, and then sometimes he would play in the midfield, above the number 6 pivot, which was usually Kevon Lambert. So, I'm not sure if it's just a training thing, if something's wrong with Kanto. I'm sure we're going to find out here real soon, having to play so many games. Calistri talking about he's been okay defensively. He does bring a lot of attacking prowess going forward when you see Lambert come back and drop to fill in for the back 3 when they have the ball.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Certainly going forward, he looks great. But yeah, there seems to be a little, not all the time, I have to say.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys is Rick Schantz had said that he had problems with basically the new backfield where King and Conto early on just weren't pressing forward as much. And of course, Schantz is a guy that likes to have his fullbacks press forward. Obviously, we've seen King starting to get involved in the offense. He scored the goal the other night. Is it maybe that Conto just isn't offensive-minded enough? And Schantz says, okay, well, let's get Calistri in there because he's a guy that's going to push forward, especially on that right side, because on the right back is the guy that you're relying on to feed Solo. Last year, I thought Dumbuya and Solo had a really good connection together. And I think that right now, you're just kind of maybe missing that connection to Solo. But today was the first time that Solo had scored a goal since Calistri had been back there. So I really think it's just a matter of where Schantz is looking to get something pushing forward from that right back position.
I mean, honestly, you're probably onto something there because after the match on Saturday, Darnell King was one of the guys that we were talking to, and he said that him and Schantz spoke and Rick told him, you need to get higher up the pitch, and King agreed. And then on Tuesday, I asked Rick about that, and Rick said that, while yes, that happened and that's correct, it doesn't necessarily just pertain to when they have the ball. It also pertains to stepping to the defenders that they have, stepping as defenders to the attacking players that they're supposed to be marking. And it's not just their guy on their wing. There's a few guys that they need to step to in their system. And if Darnell King is able to do that on the left, and Rick went on to talk about his chemistry with Junior, and he literally said he wished that everyone could hear how they communicate with each other and talk about attacking the opposition. So that actually could very well be the reason why, having a connection with Solo on the right, because Darnell King and Junior Flemings obviously have a great rapport on the left.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say I've been deeply, deeply impressed with Darnell King in recent weeks. He's some guy that's really sort of cemented his place there in the team, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was the starting right back from the get-go, and he's definitely proven he can play both left and right. So I don't see, unless he needs a rest or he's got some cards, I don't really see a reason why he's out of the lineup.
Yeah, the other thing that I've been really impressed with is the midfield depth. I think that we're really starting to see that. I think Sam Stanton is a guy that really has shown something. Matt, I know that earlier in the season you had some concerns about the midfield depth. What are you seeing here over the past few weeks with Stanton and Schweitzer and some of these other guys starting to step up?
Yeah, I think we're seeing I think Sam Stanton kind of started out slow. I think once he's kind of gotten his feet wet, played some few more games here, you're really starting to see him come on. He seems to partner really well with Baquero. And even today, him coming in off the bench, he looked settled back there. Schweitzer is another guy that, it seems like he's really taken hold to the system that we play and kind of his role in the squad. And anytime you got someone like Kevin Lambert behind you, who's just, I think has just been phenomenal this year. And I said during our chat while we were watching the game today that I can't see Kevin Lambert playing in the USL much longer. He's ready to make that jump to the next level. So I think our midfield looks really good. I think the one thing that kind of worries me is it seems like Baquero's kind of coming on a little bit slow. I think we're seeing him misplace some passes that we didn't normally see last season. And I think maybe it was just that layoff, and hopefully, some of that rust gets shaken off here in the next couple matches, because we're going to need him to step up, especially as we start playing these games. And, as Jake talked about, we're going to face a Las Vegas team 3 of the next 4 matches. And, but yeah, man, I've been pleasantly surprised with our midfield. Even Jack Barmby, man, if he was unlucky, I think, not to score today. Yeah. And that would have been another debutante goal. We talked about it today. first goals this week already in Schweitzer and King and Moore. So it's been good to see.
Is there any word on Barnby how he's held up? Was that a cramp or was he slightly injured there? Do we know?
I put in a request and I got a no reply. So I know as much as you guys do from what you saw on TV.
Oh,
right.
That's a shame.
Okay, so it's still wait and see. It sounds like. Jake, what were your thoughts on what you've seen on some of the new midfielders? I mean, like we said, we have Bakero and Lambert have kind of been stalwarts, but then you had Stanton and Schweitzer and some of these other guys stepping in. Even Moore, he's more of a winger, but we're really starting to see the depth that this team is built, and it just seems like every year we're adding a couple more pieces, and it's really starting to look like a really complete roster. And I thought we kind of flexed our muscles and showed the depth this week. What do you think?
Yeah, you definitely seen the new midfielders starting to come into their own and do what we kind of expected them to do. I think we all see that the chosen three is Bakero, Stanton, and Lambert. Now, my question is, what does this midfield look like without Kevin Lambert for a long period of time? Because we have not seen one match yet where Kevin does not play the majority of the game. So, at least to my knowledge, if I could go through the lineups, but you get what I'm saying. And I agree with what Matt was
last
saying.
year we had Musa to bring in when Lambert would go out, and with Musa gone, there's really not anybody else that's proven at that position.
I'm going to say something probably wildly controversial, or maybe not, maybe just a little bit stupid, naive. But, I love Kevin Lambert's busting runs down the midfield. And who else did a couple of busting runs this afternoon? Conto. He looked great, like just busting up the wing there, that big sort of lanky stride of his. It was very reminiscent of the two. I don't know. Could he slot across into that sort of central midfield role?
Hey, man.
Doing good.
Yeah, Conto didn't play.
Kunga, I'm sorry.
Lagos Kunga, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That guy, yeah.
He's definitely, in my opinion, a winger more so than a number 9, just because he doesn't play the number 9 way that Rick wants, which is back to goal and using strength and being able to play off of wingers. You saw he was making those darting runs because he has so much pace. And you kind of saw, I forget who was kind of asking for the ball, but it might have been Dadashev. Yeah, but Lagos elected to take it himself. They had a big lead anyway. It didn't matter. But I don't know if he necessarily could play in the midfield. We just haven't seen him enough.
I don't know if he quite has the strength to play that position. That would be my question. I mean, he certainly, for what Sean said, he's the fastest guy on the whole team. I guess he's like a 4.340 kind of guy. I mean, when I saw him today, he almost kind of reminded me like of a Pepe type player. I mean, obviously not quite at that level, but that's what he reminded me of. The way that he kind of flew up the wing, kind of out of control, and fired the ball like that. That was what he reminded me of more.
No, I think when you're talking replacements, so if something happens to Kevin Lambert, and I'm going to echo what Jake said. I don't think he hasn't been in that position. I don't even know if he's been subbed off. He could have played for every minute that we've played so far. I think
he's been subbed off at one point, because I just remember when I used to do one of my articles that Whelan was the only guy that had played every minute up to that point. But yeah, it's been like he was subbed off for like the last 10, 15 minutes of a match at the max.
I think your natural replacement for that person is going to be Jordan Schweitzer. Mm-hmm. I think he's that guy. If he needs to, he's going to step in. He's able to play kind of anywhere in that central midfield. So if it's, more attacking, he can play up there. If it's more defensive, he's played back there. And so I think he's your natural replacement for a Kevin Lambert. And does he come in to do as good a job as Kevin Lambert does? Hopefully.
Well, you know what? I was suitably impressed again with Schweitzer today. He's quite a recognisable figure on the field. You know, he's got that hairstyle, and you see it everywhere across the pitch. You know, whenever there's a play, he's in or thereabouts. Do you know what I mean? He's certainly one of those players that has a lot of get-go, you know?
Yeah, I think that he definitely is a guy that he's out of our midfielders other than Lambert. He's going to be the guy that's the most defensive minded. So I definitely agree with what Matt is saying. The other thought that I kind of had is if you needed a replacement for Lambert at center back, obviously you have AJ and Farrell who can both play center back, maybe move Whelan up to the Lambert position. I think he's a guy that could maybe play there.
You definitely could. That wouldn't be far-fetched. Corey Whelan, you're talking about, is very versatile because he can play outside back as well. They've actually started to make Austin Ledbetter into a center back, so he's going to be center back number 4 to give a solid 2 for each back there. But I just was looking through the lineups real quick. Yeah, Kevin Lambert has started every single match, so we've yet to see a game where he doesn't start. And I do agree that Jordan Schweitzer would be the next man up in that position. And I agree with Arran with that spark you're talking about. I call it an engine. The guy that's just going to run and win balls back and just give it to the Stanton, the Baqueros, and the Barnbys in front of them to do what they do best. And here's a name that we haven't heard in a while is Jose Aguinaga.
I was just about to ask about him.
There we go. Yes.
I think it's important to point out he wasn't even on the bench today.
Exactly. And that was my first thought and I think that's how many games now that he hasn't really been even featured in the reserves.
I understood at one point that he was maybe working back from an injury. Is it possibly a fitness issue, or is it just that he's out of the lineup?
I have not heard anything from the team about any injuries. So it would, if I had to guess at this moment in time with the information, I understand it would just be that he's getting beaten out in training.
Wow. Yeah. Quite often Phoenix Rising posts before the game the injury report, and today was none, and last week it was none, and the week before it was none. So that's a bit of a mystery that I can only assume it's a fitness thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because he was really a key cog last year, but that really just shows that this is a team that, like Schott says, everybody's fighting for a position. Nobody has a position locked in.
It's great to see competition for places.
I think Junior Fleming's might right now.
Yeah, you're probably right there, mate. Speaking of Flemmo, how did he go today?
He's leading the scoring charts now, all by himself.
Oh, he's number 1. Yep. He
took over the lead for Pasher.
Well, the goal celebration today from Flemmo to open up the scoring for Phoenix Rising was rather subdued. And Matt made the comment, he's like, he's just scoring too many. I don't think that's entirely the case. Was there anything else about that, or is Matt right?
From what I saw, it looked like it was hotter than hell. Like it was, so you would think Southern California, maybe it's going to be low 90s and windy and nice, but it looked like it was mid to high 90s, and the humidity. You saw everyone was cramping.
Yeah, they reported on the broadcast that it was over 50% humidity. So I mean, I think that.
Wow. That's disgusting. I'm from Arizona. That's nasty.
Now, one of the things that we wanted to look at is also the upcoming matches. And like Jake mentioned a little bit earlier, there's 3 matches coming up against our favorite flailing arm guy on the pitch team, Las Vegas Lights.
Don't forget the Llamas, Phil.
What's that?
Don't forget the Llamas.
and the kiddie pools and the $2 tequila and the hype man
and the gaming tables. That was such a garbage shit show, isn't it? And speaking of shit shows, they are a real shit show this year, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they've really been struggling, and so we're going to play them on Saturday afternoon. Do you think that we're going to have any trouble just based on the short rest? To me, that's the only thing that could kind of slow us down that I could think of.
I mean, so here's the thing. Las Vegas is currently playing right now. So we're recording this at 8:23 on Wednesday night. Las Vegas is about to hit halftime against Seattle Sounders. They're up 2-0. But they played this past Saturday in Orange County. They're playing tonight. They're playing Saturday. They're playing that next Tuesday. Then they're playing that. I mean, this team has just
no. They legitimately have to play midweek and weekend for the rest of the season.
Right. I mean, so
that started last week.
Right. They're going to be just. I mean, you're going to have to. Frank Yallop. The return of the old coach is going to have to figure out how to manage that with this team. And so I think we're actually in a better position than they are. Coming off of a midweek, midday game, we get a few extra hours of recovery. As we saw today, the team flew home the same day today, so they're sleeping in their own beds tonight. They'll have a recovery session tomorrow. I think we're at an extreme advantage there, even with the travel to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, even though we're playing 3 games in 7 days, they're actually playing more than us. And, we've got the travel in there, but, like you said, and like Coach said, not only were they able to fly out right after the game today, be at home in their own beds, but on Saturday, I guess they're actually flying the day of the game. So, they've really cut down on the travel that's been involved, and I think that could be a key.
Yeah, apparently that's the first time in history that they're going to be flying out on match day, because they're flying out that morning, and then they're going to be flying back Sunday morning, early Sunday morning.
Nasty. That fixture list ahead of them is really not kind, considering they're playing us, then they're playing Orange County, they're playing Los Dos 2, San Diego, the Nutty. I mean, they're playing the top of the group, basically, and they're playing us 3 times. I don't weep for, Vegas Lights, because I think they're a terrible outfit, but, they're going to get smashed, aren't they? They're going to get injuries. They're going to get tired. They're going to get injuries because they're tired. And I think that it's coming against a couple of teams that are really on form right now. I'd hate to be a Vegas Lights fan, which is why I'm not.
Honestly, and I think it honestly happened in 2018. If you guys remember, it was the match. Was it the last game of the regular season or the second to last game? Rising lost 5-2 in Vegas. And because of how poor their form was in the last few games, it ended up dropping them down in the seeds.
I remember
Obviously,
that.
It didn't end up mattering because they went to the final, but they would have been able to host maybe the conference final. Anyway,
I felt like what happened there was that, remember Drogba had been on that World Cup broadcast break, and then he came back for the last few games. I think that was just kind of working Drogba back into the lineup, kind of changed everything. And then by the first round of the playoffs, they had the ship righted.
Well, my point with that specific game in Vegas was Rick basically deployed the B team because it was a midweek game, and a lot of the backups from that 2018 team played, and they were winning but ended up losing 5-2. And I just feel like that game just made Rick not take anybody lightly anymore, because you got embarrassed by a bad side.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to see that type of play from Rick, because even against the bad sides last year, it wasn't like he ever put the brakes on. It was always like, how many do they want to score today? And
Right.
So I think
That's
we're going to see that from now on from Rick Schantz.
That's a great point, because I know that Schantz has specifically said that, kind of at the beginning of his time with the Rising and, his first season and a half or so, that there was a couple of times that he made decisions he will never make again. And I think that game that you're pointing to is certainly one of the ones that he talks about. The other one that I kind of think about was last year, that Austin Bold game when he made the 6 changes.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up, Phil. That's exactly the other time. I was going to say, I didn't remember losing to Vegas Lights. But then when he said he made all of those changes and put on his B-side, I'm like, yeah, I do remember that. I remember being really angry about it.
Billy Forbes started that game.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But actually, that's another good point you bring about the Austin game. When I interviewed Rambo when he was on his way, the week before he left for Newcastle, he said that last year when they lost that game, the coaches didn't have to say anything. The players took it amongst themselves. And he said that was a turning point in the season. Obviously, you saw the results, but the fact that they didn't have to scold the players, come down on the players took it amongst themselves, and it was just, let's go to work. So I think it's interesting that we can point to certain places throughout the last 2 seasons and see how that has affected the team's performance last year and even this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this year we might look at that second Orange County game, because I think the first Orange County game, that was a battle. It was just, one of those Phoenix Orange County games. But I think that second Orange County game was probably the one time this season when you can say the Phoenix Rising didn't play well. Then, they've kind of turned it around since they came out. They beat El Paso. They blew away New Mexico and, run off 4 in a row since then. So it does seem that this is a team, like you said, that when they do take a bad loss or have a poor performance, that they say, okay, let's get to work and not let that happen again.
Yep, I have to agree with that. I'd have to agree with that. Do we have a score prediction for the Vegas game, anyone? Does anyone want to be brave enough to beat me down?
But before we do that, before we do our score prediction for Vegas, because that's usually what we end with, one thing I wanted to ask Jake about, because this was something that we had talked about on our post-match show last week, and I think that today's result kind of solidifies even further that I think Phoenix Rising are going to run away with first place in Group B. But looking at the standings, I mean, you've got Orange County 11 points, you've got San Diego 11 points, but they've played a lot more matches. Even Los Dos is there, 9 points. They still have 3 games in hand on San Diego. They played the 5. Vegas, they are winning tonight, but I don't think anybody sees them going anywhere. So, Jake, between the Orange County, San Diego, and Los Dos, who do you think will take that second spot? Is it in Orange County, or do you think that one of these other teams will step in and surprise us?
I think Group B is done in terms of which teams are coming out, and I think that's going to be Phoenix and OC. But what's going to be interesting is going to be the order, because as of right now, OC can win this group and Rising can do nothing about it, theoretically, because if OC wins all the games they have in hand, they have a 1-point advantage on Rising, which means they don't even have to beat Phoenix Rising when they play them. So in the last match of the regular season, they could tie, and, should they match each other the whole way, you get what I'm saying. So it's going to be a battle between those two. I think the biggest thing is for Rising to continue to keep pressure on them to win, because they have so many games in hand. It's kind of like, okay, well, we have a game in hand, but if Rising keeps winning, it puts, even more mental pressure on you. It's like, crap, well, we got to win all these games now when Rising's already accomplished that. So while I want to side with Rising in terms of what I've seen when they're playing well, I don't really think anyone can stop them. I can't speak for the Eastern Conference because I don't watch them as much, but I think it's a 2-horse race in Group B. And if I had to predict, I would say Phoenix, but I think it's going to be close. It's going to be fun.
That's interesting what you say there, because you don't think the race is for second place. You think that the race is still between first and second. So what I'm hearing is that you don't think it was any kind of a surprise that Orange County gave Phoenix such a tough time. You think Orange County is maybe that second best team in the Western Conference overall.
Yeah, and I was shocked at the step back they took last year. I was expecting more from OC, and they still had the base of their team. But as we've seen in USL, certain things can happen year to year, obviously. But they definitely look like they're back to what they were. They might not be the number 1 seed or number 2 seed that they were in 2018, but they've proven that they can hang with Phoenix Rising, and they haven't lost yet. So, until someone else proves that they can beat them, you have to respect them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I was surprised last year. I mean, they did lose in Edmondson last year, and he came back this year. So, I mean, that's just a huge player in terms of it, especially with the USL, to have a guy like that. And I think he's about 31 years old. So, he's kind of at the end of his prime, but it's very rare to see a guy with that type of skill at that age, that type of experience in the USL. That's just kind of a rare unicorn, if you will. Kind of like Phoenix Rising has players like Flemings and Solo that are guys that just don't usually play in the USL. You see them at the MLS or somewhere in Europe. I think in Evelyn City is one of those game-changing guys.
And I actually think he might still be in Denmark, I believe it is. He just had a child with his wife, and that's why he missed the Phoenix Rising games. And I'm looking through the games that they've played since, and he's not even in the reserves. So I don't want to speak for him because I can't confirm it. But if I had to guess, I think he's still overseas.
Yeah, I know that Sean had said that he missed those 2 games because his wife is having the baby. I don't know. Like you said, if he's been back yet, I would assume that he'll be back before the end of the season, though.
Could still be working himself into fitness. I haven't talked to OC, so I don't really know for sure.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. But let's go ahead and Matt, did you have any other questions before we got on to our score predictions?
No, not off the top of my head, man. I think, as we look forward to this next run of games, obviously we're playing Las Vegas Lights 3 out of the next 4 matches. So you kind of know what to expect there. Jake, who do you think, as we look at the remaining schedule for the Phoenix Rising, what team out there do you think is going to provide us with the biggest opposition? Is it OCSC, or is that just a team where, we kind of know enough about them to know how to prepare, and we know it's going to be a tough match game? Is there a team that, we need to look out for because they might surprise us? What are your thoughts?
I think the other team that's in the Western Conference that can give Phoenix Rising a run for their money is going to be Reno, that they're facing anyway. Other than that, the rest of the schedule is within the group. And within this group, I think it's OC. But that Reno test is going to be interesting because that's a team that is in Group A. So and they're battling right now at Sacramento. And that is a 2-horse race as well. So it's going to be interesting if they get to play Reno in the first round of the round of 16, or maybe they would see them in the quarterfinals should they get there. But that would be a playoff preview other than OC at the end of the year.
Do you think that Reno match could have a big influence on whether or not we place first in this group or second?
Oh, absolutely. If let's say Phoenix Rising loses that game and now Orange County wins the 3 games they have in hand, and then you don't have that extra cushion anymore. Not only are you losing, but then you also lost the game. So it makes that end of the game year against OC, it might even decide who wins this group, honestly. And it's here. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Reno, I mean, I'm just kind of looking at the table here. They're certainly a team to keep an eye on. They've got a +8 goal difference. I mean, right now, Phoenix Rising has +18, which is the best in the conference by a mile. San Antonio is second with +11, but then Reno is right in there +8. They're 5-0-2, so they have dropped a couple of matches. And like you said, right now they're on 15 points. Sacramento's on 15 points. So, I mean, those 2 teams, they're going to make the playoffs because the other teams in their group are Sounders 2, who right now, or I guess they're Tacoma Defiance now, but they've only got 7 points, and they're losing to Vegas right now. Portland Timbers, too, have 0 points, so they're not going anywhere. They're 0-6, but I mean, Reno and Sacramento, they're really going to be battling for the that first place spot. So I mean, that's going to be a game where both teams are going to have equal footing that they're fighting for, if you will.
Yeah, and theoretically, let's say Rising wins round of 16, then they could play the other one. Let's say OC ends up playing the opposite. They play SAC, and then SAC wins. Rising could end up playing Reno and SAC, or they could end up playing OC for a fourth time and potentially twice in 3 weeks. That's a very potential playoff matchup as well. And going back to playing the same teams over and over, which you never see because you only have the home and away, and then maybe if you had an open cup and then a playoff, that would be the only way that could happen. But it'll definitely be interesting. The possibility of playing the same teams in such quick succession, you learn from game to game exactly what your opponent's going to try to do. It makes it definitely possible to be upset by the smaller team. I mean, that's what happens in derbies all the time. You play the same players and there's so much passion in it, and everyone wants to play Phoenix Rising as hard as they can, right? We've seen that.
Target on their back, if you will.
Exactly.
It's really interesting what you bring up about the brackets, because looking here, it seems like this is the second year in a row that Phoenix Rising have ended up on the wrong side of the bracket. Because I remember last year thinking, okay, they're going to have to play the winner of Orange County and Salt Lake in the second round, and I thought Orange County and Salt Lake were the two next best teams, if you will. Looking at the bracket this year, like you said, you've got Reno, you've got Sacramento, you've got Orange County. They're all going to be on Phoenix's side of the bracket. You look at the group C and D, San Antonio, they've got New Mexico, and then the other teams they're going to play are El Paso and Tulsa right now. I mean, it's like, San Antonio is pretty much coming out of that side from what I see right now.
Yeah, it is kind of the theme lately. It almost seems like we saw it in the World Cup. You've seen it in the Champions League. It's kind of like, why this keeps happening kind of thing. But hey, it's good for viewers. And I've always been a big promoter of, if you're going to be the best, you might as well beat the best.
Right.
It's convenient when you have an easy schedule that can get you to a final, and then you only got to win that one tough game. But if you can prove you can knock out the better teams, yes, it's going to be difficult, but this whole season's been difficult. So like they've been saying, in the asterisk, this is a crazy year. So we'll see what happens. But this season in general, I know this isn't my show, but I want to get your guys' thought on this.
Yeah.
The whole playing a season and crowning a regular season victor, and then having a playoff format based on that, which is, just a bunch of one-off games. I'm of the thought process of over 34 matches, if you dominate the way you dominated, the way Phoenix did last year, that's the true sign of a champion. And I always like to point to, was it 2 years ago where Liverpool lost more games in the Champions League and won the Champions League than they lost in the Prem, and they didn't win the Prem.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, what are your thoughts on this? Because this is something I've talked about quite a bit, but Matt, you go first on this.
Well, I think it's, for our listeners, it's really this discussion of which model's better, the American model of sports championships or the European model. And I agree with Jake, man. When you have, a 34-game season or a 46-game season, whatever it is, and you're consistently dominating people, and you're winning games, and you go on a winning streak like Phoenix Rising went on last year, and then to get knocked out in the first round of a play, or whatever, get knocked out in the playoffs, that to me doesn't mean as much. When you can dominate week in and week out over 34 games or a whole season, that's where you show what team you are. Because playoffs, man, and we've seen this even this year in the Champions League, especially with the cancellation of two-legged knockout stage games where you have a team like Lyon, knocking off larger
nobody
teams.
thinks they're really better than Man City. I mean,
right
there,
right, and that's one of those things of one game. Yeah, in any sport, any team can beat any team over one game. And that's why I think in American sports and like basketball and in baseball, you see some of this idea of series where, it's a best of 7 or it's a best of 4 or whatever it is. And then it makes sense. Okay, now there are teams, that are going out and, they might drop that one game, but over the series, they were better. Whereas, you look at the way, even recently, you look at the MLS has adopted a home and away kind of format for the early rounds of their playoffs. But football's another thing, American football, where it's like that one game, that team that finished 9-7 in the regular season can knock off the team that finished 11-6. And you can't sit there and say it's necessarily a better team.
Different. To me, American football is a whole different animal than anything in the world. And Matt, what you were talking about, kind of going back to the basketball, has always been where I sit on this. And Jake, I know that you're a basketball fan because I know you like some of my Phoenix Suns tweets. I know that you'll be on.
I grew up the 04, 05. I was 10 years old, and that captured me. And it's been just heartbreaking these last 10 years, man.
You're making me feel old because I went to my first game when I was 7 years old, but that was in 1988. So you made me feel real old there. But going back to what Matt was saying is, basketball. So there's two things with basketball is you can play the 7-game series. And to me, and this is actually what I've always thought would be really cool for the USL. This is the solution that I've offered. But so the 7-game series is awesome for that reason because you can do that in basketball or even in hockey. But the thing in basketball is you're scoring 100 points or more than 100 points. So it's not like you just have one ball that bounces off of a rock and happens to go in the goal, and that's the only goal for the whole.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So to me, I think it's the playoffs are something that work well for basketball and even for hockey, even though that is kind of a bounce sport, if you will. They still do the 7-game series. And in American football, it's a short schedule sport. So, okay, that works. But for association football, no, it does not work. Now, I understand the problem with the USL is when you have close to 40 teams, you can't just put them all into one table necessarily. So here's what my proposition is that you should have the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. Every team plays home and away against the other teams at their conference. And then at the end of the season, the first place team in the West and the first place team in the East play a 7-game series for the championship.
That's basically what baseball did in the old days. And that's actually what I can't speak for other leagues, lower divisions. I can speak for Italian lower levels. That's what Serie C, which is the 3rd division, that's what they do because they have so many freaking teams. You play in your region, and then the winners of those regions will play each other for promotion and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But the last thing I'll say about this whole playoff thing is this is what blows my mind. In a playoff system in association football, you do not even have to score a goal and you can win a trophy. You just go to pens every single game. You can't not score a goal in a regular season and expect anything good to happen.
I got to ask you something controversial now. Do you prefer the golden goal? Would you go back to that if given the chance? I'm a golden goal guy, but I know everybody else hates it.
So the reason why I don't like the golden goal is very biased, and that's because I'm Italian and my family, I'm a second-generation American. So when Italy lost to France in 2000 via golden goal, I've hated it ever since. But as a hockey fan, it's the greatest thing in the world. It's you can't let up. I mean, but if we look back, obviously New Mexico ended up winning in a shootout last year in the Open Cup, but they scored first, or was it Rising who scored first? I can't remember, but
no, they scored first because we kept coming back and equalizing.
That's what it was.
Adam John had the equalizer. I think it was like the 115th minute or something like that.
So yeah, so that was my point. It would have been over just like that, and you kind of think, I don't know. I haven't lived in a world where the golden goal was a rule long enough for me to really see both sides of it. I only had one bad experience with it personally. Right. So it would just be a different thing. It would be like introducing VAR and how that has changed the world and changed the game. For good or for bad, whether you like it or not, it's definitely changed the game.
Matt, what are your thoughts on it?
I echo what Jake's saying there, where, you don't, in some of these tournaments with soccer, you don't have to score a goal. You can just keep going to penalties. And I think that was the idea behind these two-legged affairs, and, having the away goals being weighted was to kind of get rid of some of that. I'm kind of torn on it. Personally, I would probably much rather watch a game that has a golden goal rule, because I feel like you can get to this point, when teams are in extra time, where they've each just come to the conclusion, you know what, we're tired, we'll just go to penalties. Mm-hmm. Or you have one team that right, or you have one team that just says, okay, let's play for the penalties because we know, our keeper has studied, that a lot, and we trust him. And so I think I'd personally much rather watch a game where golden goals is taking place. And then part of me, misses kind of like the old school MLS style shootout. I don't know if you guys remember that or if have much awareness of how the videos. MLS used to do it. Yeah. So part of me kind of misses hockey, that. Basically. Right. So maybe that's an option going forward. Brings a little bit more excitement than just putting the ball down on a penalty spot. Instead, you have a guy dribbling in and going one-on-one with a goalie, and, it gives the goalie, I think, a better opportunity in some regards. So that might be more entertaining than a golden goal.
Because I think in hockey that the shootout works because it's kind of like a 50-50 shot where the goalie has about a 50% chance of stopping it in hockey, where in association football, it's just so skewed to the shooter. Maybe you should get like a keeper and two defenders or something like that. And I don't know. It's just, to me, penalty kicks in soccer are too easy is what gets me, I guess.
Do you think that golden goal makes teams more afraid to push up or more eager to push up?
I personally think it depends on the team. So I think so. Let's look at like what we know here with USL. If you're looking at even what we saw today, so if you had Phoenix and LA going into a game where golden goal was in effect, I think you're going to see Phoenix pushing because they know they have that ability to go for it. I think we've seen where they have enough confidence in guys like Whelan and AJ Cochran.
They'll take their chances on the counter. Yeah,
they'll take their chances. And even you look at some of the speed we have with guys making those recovery runs. And I think you have a team like LA Galaxy would be like, nope, crap, we can't do this. Let's sit back. Let's defend, because the only way
they get caught on the counter, it's over.
Right, exactly. So I think when you look at golden goal, it just depends on that team. Kind of looking at the EPL. I think Liverpool is that team that's going to be like, nope, we're going for it. This is what we got. Van Dijk back there. We got, other guys. Byron would be the same way.
Is anyone anyone a Spurs fan here?
No one's a Spurs fan.
Okay. I'm going to go. I'll say on the other end for EPL, Jose Mourinho would park the bus and play for penalties.
Yeah. Oh, right. Exactly.
Or counter.
Yeah. Hands down. He might not even play for a counter with that Spurs team. Depending on who you got out and who's injured. But so I think it just really depends on the team there.
Yeah, now, before we get to the final thing that we talk about here, which is going to be the score prediction, and unfortunately, Arran had to jump off a little bit early, and his score prediction. We got to give a shout out to Arran because he predicted 2-0. And then he predicted 4-1. So I was telling Aaron that if he had
He's
just
got the last two?
He's got the last two.
Wow.
He has got the last two. So I was telling him if he had just put $20 on the first time and let it ride, he'd be up to like $2,000 by now.
Damn.
But one thing I thought that it was kind of something to just kind of savor as Phoenix Rising fans is earlier today I was on an interview with a gentleman named Dave Thomas, who's an author from Lancashire, who has written over 20 books about Burnley, and he's been attending football matches all over England and been to every stadium in the country since 1964. I think is when he attended his first match. And one of the questions that we asked him was the best player that he had ever seen played live. There were 4 or 5 names that came up, but one of them that came up was Didier Drogba. So as Phoenix Rising fans, we could actually give the same answer as a guy who spent the last 50 years traveling England watching football. So that really just puts into perspective what a legend we actually had here for a few years, and he obviously still is owner of the team.
Oh, yeah, I try to tell everybody that doesn't know Drogba, like he finished in, I don't know if it was 08-09 or 09-10, but he finished in 3rd place for the Ballon d'Or. I mean, so that just shows where he is in world football, won a Champions League. And honestly, if it wasn't for getting hurt, he could have had, I don't think he would have won the World Cup, but I think he would have had a little more success. He got hurt and then he was in a group of death and he just got unfortunate.
Just an incredible talent. It was just one of those things where, talking to this guy who, he's just been to thousands of games and seen just about everybody play. And, we said, who's the best you ever saw play? And one of the names that came up was our very own Drogba here that we've all seen play live. And Matt is a Chelsea supporter, actually. So he's watched Drogba win the Champions League over there for his club.
That I have. So before we move on to score predictions, I just want to bring up one more interesting point about Saturday's match, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but that's that we see Frank Yallop kind of return in some sense to face his former club, and thought I'd get your guys' opinions on. He knows Rick Schantz fairly well. I'm pretty sure Rick Schantz was an assistant for him.
Yeah, that
back
was
in
actually
2017.
something that Schantz talked about that on the coaches call on Tuesday, and it spoke very highly of him. Jake, why don't you you were on that call too, so why don't you go ahead and expand on that? Yeah,
he was just talking about what he had learned from Frank, and the big thing that he took away was just the human being aspect of the teams and how these aren't just he called them these aren't robots. These are people like you and me. They have feelings and families, and they have good days, they have bad days, and they go to work every day, and you're not coming into the office, so to speak, onto the pitch, but you're not going in just to, clock in, clock out. Like there's a lot more to it, and you got to coach your team as if, they're not just workers. That's a family, if that's what you can call it. And those are actually his words. But in terms of that having any aid to Frank, I really don't think so, because at this point with Phoenix Rising, it's not an easy task to slow them down at all. Maybe he has an inkling of what Rick might want to do tactically, but you still got to go out there and do it and stop them, and that's really a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, I think it's like in baseball the other day when Zach Greinke, I don't know if you heard about this, but Zach Greinke, I guess, was calling out his pitches before he threw them to kind of prove that the Astros' whole sign stealing thing, just to to prove that you can know what pitch is coming, but you still got to hit it. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is that Frank might know some of Rick's tactics, but knowing the tactics isn't going to stop it by itself.
Yeah, and you obviously watch film on your opponent's last few games to see what they're doing before you, and let's say for some reason, some games, we saw what Man City did with Pep. Like he changed his team just so ever slightly. Will Rick do that? Who knows? He could, but from what I've seen from Rick Schantz, it's not fixed, or excuse me, if it's not broken, there's no reason to fix it. Like it works what he's doing, and if the team does what he does and they press, and weather allows them to not cramp, and they're playing in Vegas, which is basically the same as here, so I don't foresee it being an issue. Vegas, we're going to get into the scores and all that, but Vegas can't score. Including tonight, they got 5 goals on the year. So
yeah,
that's not a good formula to play against Phoenix Rising.
Yeah, I think that Coach Schantz definitely is very adamant about that. I remember after the OC game on one of the calls that somebody kind of asked him if he was going to change up tactics. He kind of said, well, nobody was asking me this question. We used those tactics to win 20 games in a row last year. So, yeah, well, like you said, he's an if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that one of those things is there's what you call kind of a kitchen sink game, where, if you will, where a kitchen sink game would be, you pull out everything, including the kitchen sink, because you need to pull out all the stops to beat these teams. Well, Las Vegas Lights are the last thing compared to a kitchen sink game. They're maybe the team that you just show your most vanilla tactics to, because you want to save your secret stuff for the Orange Counties and Renos of the world.
I think the biggest question on Saturday is who starts up top. Is it Rufat Dadashov or is it Junior Flemings?
I would say Rufat, because
it's going to be Rufat if I had to bet.
But like
he won't not start 2-point games in a row. There's no way.
But like we pointed out, everyone knows what formation we're coming out playing. You can pretty much guess the starting lineup at this point. You just got to stop it. And to Jake's point, LA Galaxy or Las Vegas Lights have only scored 5 goals. I just want to point out that at least 1 goal tonight was an own goal from Tacoma. So
sorry, they've allowed 5 goals. They've only scored 4.
So they've only scored 4.
I was looking at the wrong metric. They've only scored 4 as of now. If they end up scoring again by the time we end recording, but most likely it won't be over 5.
Again. They've got 3 goals tonight now. Junior Sandoval just scored the 67th minute.
Okay, so then they do have 5 goals. There we go.
Still, to your point, not how you necessarily want to compete with Phoenix Rising here. You're going to have to.
They haven't allowed a ton of goals either, to be fair, but they're not doing well, obviously.
Right. Well, and then, if you look at who they've played, I think most of their games have been against either Tacoma or other lower down teams. They lost. They haven't really played.
They lost to Orange County 1-0. They lost to Reno 1-0. They lost to San Diego 2-1. They drew with San Diego 1-1.
But that was back in March, that first one.
Yeah. So
right.
I mean, I think what catches my eye is that in the Reno match and the Orange County match, they only conceded 1 goal in each of those. They didn't score at all in either one of them, but it seems like maybe they do have something going on defense. I mean, they're probably going to be playing that Mourinho ball that you were mentioning earlier.
Honestly, that's kind of what we've seen work against Rising, and it's not a strategy that's going to get you wins a lot against Rising, but it might get you some draws, and it's just park the bus, defend in deep lines. And I think that was the importance in, at least for,
the game at Tulsa last year is kind of the one that sticks out to me, where they just kind of parked the bus. They hadn't cut the grass for 2 weeks. And
teams will do anything they can to knock them off. Saw what happened in OC.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, That's one of those things where, you know, I think that what you see with as much as people complain about the MLS2 teams, with a team like LA Galaxy 2, they're always going to play you straight up because ultimately they're trying to develop players for the big club. So they're not going to do that park the bus, slog ball, don't cut the grass, because they're trying to create technical players that can play at the next level. So that's why I think, you know, Phoenix Rising, they match up a lot better when they play the MLS reserve teams than they do when they play some of the lower end independent teams that are just trying to scrape out a victory.
Agreed, man.
All right, guys. Well, let's get on to that score prediction. And I think that from what we're seeing here, that maybe we're talking about a low-scoring game, or do you guys think we're going to see it go in and wipe the floor with them?
I think the games where Rising is heavily favored, they usually go one of two ways. And it's Rising gets out on top early, and then the floodgates open because now that team can't sit back anymore. Or they defend for dear life, and either it's a 1-0 game that Rising loses, or it's 0-0 kind of thing. Maybe 1-1 if they can get one. But I don't see it being in the middle. I don't see it being 3-2. I don't see it being like that at all. If I had to guess, now that you have a guy like Dadashov, and what I was trying to say earlier was when you have these teams defending so deep in lines, being able to pass to feet becomes basically impossible in the final third. So you have to start whipping balls into the box. And a guy like Dadashov's in the box, and you can get a guy like AJ Cochran up there maybe if you want to send up a center back, in the 90th minute for these headers and these corners. Those guys, I think, can get a header in. And once a header goes in, boom, that's the 19th minute, let's say. Header goes in, then the floodgates can start to open, because this team is just so dangerous on the counter because the wingers are just so fast.
Yeah, what do you think?
I've been pretty optimistic these last couple games, which is kind of unusual for me. Before the match today against LA2, I said 3-1, and if it wasn't for a stoppage time Asante goal, I would have been right. You know what?
Arran slipped the fourth official an extra $10 to add another minute of stoppage time on it.
Right. And so with the way LA or Las Vegas has been playing, they're coming back from this restart with a new coach. The way we seem to be rolling right now, I mean, is Junior Fleming's going to go one game without scoring? I don't think so. I'm gonna go 3-1 to the Rising.
Oh, I didn't even give a score, did I? I'm torn between 4 or 5. I kind of want to say 4.5-0. I'll say 5-0.
All right, Jake. Well, you know what? You didn't leave me a lot to say, because literally everything you said is exactly what I'm thinking. It's like you said, it's not going to be 3-2. It's either going to be like 1-0 or 2-1, or like you said, it'll be like 5-1 or 5-0, like you said. So I'll tell you what, since you picked the 5-0, I'm going to go with the conservative and say 2-0. We got Orange County and Reno both beat Vegas 1-0. So let's say that, Phoenix Rising is twice as good as they are and win it 2-0.
Hey, it's very plausible. That's very fair. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when they play each other the second and then especially the third time, because if you look, Phoenix is other than today, Phoenix is a completely different team on the road than they are at home. Just if you look at the records and the amount of goals that are scored.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think to me that's really something that I think is understated. Is just how much better they are at home. I think home field advantage for Phoenix Rising almost seems to be like 1.5 goals over, what they do on the road. And I think a lot of that just probably has to do with the quality of the pitch and then the weather on top of that. I mean, Las Vegas, though, I mean, they're certainly a team that, they're trying to get some pretty hot weather up there too. So it's not going to be as big of an issue with Vegas.
Reno's interesting with the elevation. I have family in Reno, so I go up there quite a bit, and it's over 4,000 feet, I believe, and we're just over 1,000 here, or 1,500, something like that.
We're 1,800 here, and Vegas is 2,500, and then what? Colorado Springs about 6,000. Albuquerque is pretty high too. Albuquerque's probably about 4,000, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but in terms of luck of the draw, Rising didn't have to play in New Mexico. Don't have to play switchback. Back to what we're talking about, the schedule and the brackets and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, that to me was probably the biggest stroke of luck that we got was getting to play New Mexico here, because I don't know that it would have been 5-2 if we'd played them there. I'm not saying we wouldn't have beat them, but I don't know if it would have been 5-2 for sure. All right, guys. Well, I think that we covered everything that happened today and got our predictions in for the Vegas game. And Jake, I really appreciate you taking the time with us tonight. Before we wrap up, did you have anything else that you wanted to go over, or also just let everybody know where they can find you at on Twitter, where they could read your articles at, all that good kind of stuff?
The last thing I'll add is going back to the Champions League in Lyon. Obviously, they're not a better team than City. If they played a second game, I'm sure it'd be a different result. But I want to throw some props out to Rudy Garcia. He is a former Roma manager. Roma is my team. I just wanted to make that known. I love the underdog. But to wrap up, you can find all my stuff for Phoenix Rising on arizonasports.com. The app is now available. We got a brand new one not too long ago, iOS and Android. It's available. And then follow me on Twitter and basically any other social media at JWA1994.
Matt, did you have anything else before we wrap up?
No, man. You know what? Maybe just get Jake's opinion on the underdog in the CL final. That's PSG. What you think they stand a chance to get against Bayern?
I was shocked they beat Atalanta. I show you tweets from earlier in the summer. I kept saying Atalanta's going to the final, and I thought it happened. Obviously, not as many people here watch the Serie A as I do, but I wasn't shocked by what happened. I was literally more shocked that PSG was able to not choke again. I think Bayern's gonna win.
I definitely think the single elimination game very much fit PSG than most other teams, because they have been horrid when it comes to the home and away ties. And I think we saw that a couple of years ago with the famous, I believe it was against PSG, with the famous Barca comeback.
Yeah, Barca scored goals in the last 9 minutes of the game to come back from a 4-0 first leg draw to win the second one 6-1.
Yeah, so PSG has just been horrible at those, and I think this benefited them. But I'm with you, man. The way Bayern has been playing and scoring, and you got a guy like Serge Gnabry and Alphonso Davies and, Lewandowski. And I mean, it's crazy.
No, they're clicking. They're on fire. It's funny. I realized it today, but Lewandowski's never won the Champions League.
Never won the Champions League. Yeah.
This is his first final back since he lost it with Dortmund.
Right. Yeah. Bayern's been on a drought. And surprisingly enough, man, I think Lewandowski could have won the Ballon d'Or this year had they had it. Yeah.
That award pisses me off because they don't do it on seasons. They do it on years, and it just throws everything off.
Yeah, I mean, and then I noticed that something like the World Cup will really skew it if it happens to be a World Cup year. And then,
different years have different stuff.
Yeah, it seems a little silly to me, but
it's cool. We get to see guys like Drogba host the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, now to be 100% honest, I've not been following the Champions League all that closely just because there's really not too many teams left that I care too much for.
I was just praying it didn't go to extra time, because if it did, I would not be able to watch extra time because Rising was starting. It was a perfect transition today.
Yeah, I've been really getting kind of deep into the. Unfortunately, the Coyotes season ended today,
Oh,
but
Phil.
it seems like
Yeah.
the Coyotes or the Suns were on at the same time as the Champions League, and so I kind of missed out on a lot of the Champions League games. But Jake, I do want to say, since you are a guy that supports underdogs, I want to extend an open invitation for you to join the official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America that we've started over here. If you want an underdog story there's not a bigger underdog in the world than Accrington Stanley.
You gotta fill me in on that then.
Yeah, well, I will definitely do that. But so Accrington Stanley, just to give you a little background of the team, they're the biggest little club in the world. Accrington's a city of 35,000 in Lancashire. They actually had a team in the original 1888 Football League. That original Accrington Stanley went out of business in 1962. In 1968, the team reformed. They played their first match again in 1970 in the 9th tier. They've worked there all the way back up to League One as of 2018. So that's kind of the long story short there. But so we've been following Accrington Stanley on the show. Last year we interviewed every first team player. We've interviewed manager John Coleman, Andy Holt, the chairman, a lot of retired players. Then we've started the official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America, where we work directly with the main supporters club over in England. And we've got our own pins here and everything. So I'll have to bring you out a pin to the next Phoenix Rising game because we wanted to invite you to join our fan club and support the biggest little team in the world.
You said they're in League One now?
Yeah, League One.
Okay. Is it? Damn. That means I got two teams I root for then. Sunderland and because the Netflix series that captured me.
Okay. So they play in the same league as Sunderland.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting fact. This will tell you how small Accrington is the entire population of Accrington could fit inside of Sunderland Stadium.
35,000. Yeah, when you put it that way, my God.
Yeah, Brett Ormerod, who came on the show, pointed that out to us. Brett Ormerod, he played for Accrington in the 90s, and then they sold him off to Blackpool, and he actually ended up playing all the way up and scored the goal in the championship playoff game that sent Blackpool into the Premier League. But when Accrington sold him to Blackpool, that was a big part of how they funded buying a lot of the players that got them from the conference into the Football League. And they finally, in 2005 is where they finally made it to League Two, back to the Football League. And in 2018, they got promoted to League One, and that's where they're at now.
I'm looking at the standings. Finished in 17th.
Yeah, 17th.
Not bad. Right above MK Dons. I've stayed at that hotel. The players came to eat with us. It was really cool. I was so excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, there's nothing more fun than just following the lower leagues.
Honestly, man, like after watching Sunderland Till I Die, it was like this is not just a game to these people. It's literally their livelihood.
Oh, it really is, because over there, the clubs are just so much a part of the community. Like in Accrington, they have a program where every year, every third grade student in Hyndburn, which is kind of like the county, if you will. Lancashire is the county, but Hyndburn is the area that's kind of the greater Accrington area. So every third grade student in Hyndburn gets an Accrington Stanley shirt at school, and so that's kind of how they build their fan base through the years. Is the kids get the shirt when they're 8 years old, and then hopefully they've got an Accrington fan for life. So they do all kinds of stuff like that over there.
I think one of the coolest things I've ever seen was I was in Dortmund at the end of 2017. Yes. And they had won the League Cup, not the league, but the League Cup.
Okay.
And instead of a star on the top of the Christmas tree, they put like a big version of the trophy in their town center for the Christmas market. And it was like, that's what I'm talking about, man. Like they put the trophy of the football team at the top of the tree. Like I love it. I was in Rome earlier that Christmas season, and well, I guess Roma doesn't win any trophies, so never mind. It's not it's not applicable.
Let's tell us a little bit on your Twitter profile. It says you're a minority owner of Roma. Tell us how you got.
Well, I'm gonna have to take that off pretty soon because Roma just sold. Roma's been publicly traded for a while now, and they just sold, and the new owners are taking them off the public trade market.
I hate that.
They did the same thing. Kroenke did the same thing with Arsenal. He bought up all the shares from the private holders, and I hate that. I mean, I think that like you said, the clubs are part of the community, and I think the community should be able to own part of the club. So sorry.
It would take
that.
another podcast in its entirety if you wanted the full scoop on what's happening in Roma. But the closest I can equivalent it to just your listeners is if you understand how the Coyotes have been a mess, imagine something like that. And this new ownership, just like the Coyotes, this new ownership is coming in, and hopefully this one works.
Well, let's plan to do that then. Let's plan here maybe next week or something, and we'll do a Roma podcast with you because we always like to do some stories from different teams around the world, and so if you're interested, then we'll schedule up a time to do a Roma podcast with you.
I mean, I've traveled to the Santiago Bernabeu to watch Cristiano Ronaldo score against Roma in the second leg of the Champions League, so I can talk about him for days.
Awesome. Well, we'd like to do that, and I'll shoot you a message on Twitter, and we'll get that worked out here, and plan on doing that here in the next couple of weeks.
I'll be here.
Awesome. I appreciate you spending so much time with us tonight, Jake, and up the rising.